Dear learners, welcome back to NPTEL online certification course on novel drug delivery system. I am Dr. Satish Devanapalli, Assistant Professor at Department of Pharmaceutical Sciences and Technology, Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai. In our novel drug delivery course, we are discussing on the topic implantable devices as well as intrauterine drug delivery systems. In our previous classes, we have discussed what are the implantable drug delivery systems. In that we have discussed very detail on the various types of implants, and also we have seen the application, advantages, disadvantages. And after that we started with the osmotic drug delivery system. In our previous session we have discussed various points, that is osmotic drug, what are the osmotic drug delivery systems, and then we have discussed the structures of osmotic drug delivery system, and also we have seen the what are the components which are involved in the designing of osmotic drug delivery systems. And after that we have seen the ideal characteristics of osmotic drug delivery system, then we have seen the advantages and the limitation, and then types of osmotic drug delivery systems. In this topic we are going to discuss on the intrauterine drug delivery systems. So, today we will focus on what are the intrauterine drug delivery systems. So, we will start with the introduction as a drug delivery system, then we will see how the uterus is ideal site for the drug delivery. Then further we will focus on the ideal properties of intrauterine drug delivery system and the advantages and then limitations. If time permits, we are going to see on the classification of intrauterine drug delivery systems. In further lectures, we will focus on the remaining part of intrauterine drug delivery systems. So far, we are discussing on the targeting of various organs. So far, we discussed on the oral drug delivery system, that is basically we target on the GIT, and we have discussed various types of gastroretentive drug delivery systems, and also further we have discussed on the mucosal drug delivery system, and we also discussed on the ocular drug delivery system, and further we have discussed on the pulmonary and nasopulmonary drug delivery systems. So far we are discussing various formulation on the basis of the organ. So, based on the target organ we are classifying the formulation. So, today we are going to discuss on another organ. So, based on that we will deliver the formulations. So, the organ name is uterus. So, here we will target, or we can say we can use some of the devices, with that we are going to deliver the drugs into the uterus. So, today our topic is intrauterine drug delivery systems. So, as we know in implants also we have discussed, we will give the combinations of the drugs as well as the with the devices. So, that is why which are called as the drug devices. Okay. So, in intrauterine devices, which are a small artificial drug device combination products that are placed inside the uterus above the endometrium. You can see the picture. So, in the uterus we need to place the device. This is a simple intrauterine device. So, which we can use to deliver the drugs through these systems. So, which will carry the therapeutic drugs, and this will specifically be used for the contraceptions, nothing but. So, which will prevent the pregnancy, that is also known as birth control. So, and further we can also use these intrauterine devices for other medical benefits. We can use for the various endometrial disorders. It may be endometriosis, or you can say endometrial cancers. Such cases we can use intrauterine devices. Now, here in the picture you can see there are the two types of the devices. One is hormonal intrauterine device and the another one is the copper intrauterine devices. Now, you can see it have the T shape the structure. The structure is T shape which can be easily hold and we can place into the uterus. So, that is why scientists have designed various types of the devices. So, when you design a new device, it is also come under the new product. So, design approach is one of the important parameter we need to consider while developing the any type of formulation. Now, this is a hormonal intrauterine device and another one is copper intrauterine devices. So, nothing but in this we will load the hormones. So, that will help us for the contraception. So, which will inhibit the or we can say which will control the pregnancy. So, whereas here in other cases copper we will provide the copper coating on the surface of the devices. So, the copper will help for the mechanism of the contraception. So, we will see further detail on the how these two types of devices will work as in a contraception in the intrauterine drug delivery systems. So, uterus an ideal site for drug delivery. Now, we will see the physiology of the uterus. Now, you can see it has the endometrium, you can see in the picture in the uterus you can see the endometrium which is the innermost layer of the uterus. So, that you can see this is the inner layer of the uterus which has rich in the blood cells. So, that will help for the absorption as well as it will help for the further bioavailability. And second thing, it has a muscular wall that is a myometrium that will help for the distribution of the help. So, these two major components which are essential for the delivery of the drugs at uterus. So, when you have high amount of blood vessels, the absorption will be very high, as we see in case of sublingual, right. Even in the oral cases, the rich in the blood vessels that will help for the absorption. These features help drugs absorb locally and at the high concentration when compared with the other routes of administration. So, the ideal for control and long term drug delivery also can be expected by using of the uterus with intrauterine drug delivery carriers. So, which will also reduce the systemic side effects which may come from the other routes. So, that will help for the patient compliance, right. When you want to go for long term, the daily application is very critical. So, once you place these devices in the uterus, it can work for 8 to 10 years. So, that is the beauty of the contraceptives. Now, yes, this can definitely overcome the all type of the limitations of the conventional oral contraceptives. There we need to take regular medicines, right. So, now we are going to discuss on the ideal properties of intrauterine drug delivery system. Now, by using of device that we know that which will help for the long acting, that is it will give the controlled release properties and you can protect the drug in the devices, and your device should have high efficacy in contraception or treatment of other any type of disease conditions. So, your intrauterine device should have high efficacy in the contraception, because most of the IUDs we use for the contraception and there are the cases we use for the bleeding application, okay, right. And now this point is very important. Here you can see the ideal properties of intrauterine drug delivery system or intrauterine device should have long acting effect. Otherwise, So, people will not use if it has come with the short acting, like using of one day for 24 hours or 1 week. So, people will not prefer these devices to use it for their treatment. So, if the drugs will release for continuous 24 hours or daily in the required dose, if it is comes in the years, so that is one of the great attention which will help for the patients. And yes, that need to work for long years, and now we try to understand reversible effect is nothing but after the removal of that intrauterine device should follow the general procedure, that is coming to the natural or original stage. So, after removing of that contraceptives or the IUDs, so that should help in the pregnancy, in the conceiving of the pregnancy. It should not create any problems to the patients in terms of bleeding, pain or any type of that effect need to be avoided. So, that is nothing but reversible effect that should not completely avoid the pregnancy after the removal of the IUDs. Now, yes, this is very interesting point. This is a minimal side effect you can see with the IUDs, whereas drugs we need to give high amount of dose and the controlling and for long term release we cannot expect with the help of conventional formulations. Yes, by using of intrauterine delivery systems that should show minimal side effects compared with the conventional formulation. Now, one more interesting point that your intrauterine device should have easy of insertion and easy of removal. If we provide this requirement, so the patients can easily can use it for their application. So, easy of insertion and removal is very important. So, you have to make like the arms of that devices, like as we discussed in the T shape, right. So, this should be easily foldable, that should not create any pain, irritation during the insertion and the removal, and that should not break at all. This part should not be break. So, this we need to consider while developing the intrauterine devices. Suitability for the diverse patient population, nothing but like from the, if you can consider for the age, from the young woman to the old age woman, that should be easily can be utilized. Not this is not should, there are the regions they will avoid all type of such contraceptives. So, you need to make such device system, so that can be useful for the diverse patient populations, even though if they are patients are suffering with any uterus infections, and that can be easily placeable. So, you have to make the suitable diverse patient population applications. Now, we will see on the advantages of intrauterine drug delivery systems. So, here you can see in the picture, you can see as I am discussing, this is the T body of the intrauterine device, and this is a drug reservoir, and this is the thread which comes in the different colors, ideally which is will be available in the brown color. Now, we can see the length and width of the device. So, it is comes in the various sizes, but this is recommended is 32 size. So, this is the T body, this is the main body, there we will load the drug, that is in the drug reservoir and the thread. It contains total 3 parts. So, what are the advantages? Once inserted, they remain in the place. So, that is one of the great advantage. Local delivery is possible with the IUDs. So, once we place, you can maintain the treatment for the 8 to 10 years. And yes, you know, there is no problem at all, even for the during the journey, and daily activities also can be worked out with the intrauterine devices. And the second point, it yes, as we already discussed, it will provide the long term and controlled drug release directly into the uterus. Whereas, in case of if you want to target like lung diseases by the oral route or by the intravenous route, you are making control release. So, reaching into the target site, whether your formulation is releasing right at oral or in the blood, but still reaching into the target site, it will take lot of time, and also it also reach to the other parts of the body, that will create the side effects. So, that can be also overcome by using of the uterus. So, there you can expect the long time and as well as controlled drug release. So, here we can see we can also minimize the side effects of the devices. Yes. So, effective for both contraceptive as well as non-contraceptions also possible by using of the IUDs. So, you can load various types of the therapeutic ingredients that can be used for the non-contraceptive application. One of the most effective birth control methods are available. When you compare with the all type of the contraceptive medications or birth control treatments, so this is the cheapest and as well as most effective, and yes, the percentage of efficacy will be greater than 99. So, that is why most of them prefer, and yes, lot of innovations are happening in this platform. Now, fertility returns quickly after removal. So, I think we have discussed in the previous slide. So, yeah, so that is called as reversible effect, which I want to highlight here. So, nothing but yeah. So, fertility returns quickly after removal. So, that is a great news, you no need to wait. Once you remove, you will get the fertility, and that means it comes to the original pathway. So, it will not affect the daily cycle or period cycles after usage of the intrauterine devices. So, now here we are going to discuss on the limitations of intrauterine devices. So, yes, so far we are discussing the advantages and the ideal properties and what are the applications of the intrauterine devices. So, here today we are going to discuss on the some of the limitations of these devices. Now, yes, compared with conventionals or other contraceptive methods, so devices definitely that will induce the pain, and it will also induces the bleeding, and yes, there are the cases you may require surgery also. So, these are the major limitations, because you are inserting the artificial device into the uterus, and yes, after inserting initial days you will feel pain and discomfort, and yes, the second point is bleeding also. It is not common with the all the patients, right. So, this is specific to some of the users, they may feel the bleeding from the uterus, and yes, there are the people if they have some critical problem with the uterus and still if they want to use it for long term application, such cases we need to go for the surgery. And yes, we can also overcome all this type of limitation by the advanced technologies with the intrauterine devices. And second limitation, the copper intrauterine devices may lead to heavier, longer periods as well as increased cramping. Because of this copper will induce the toxicity and also which will disturb the periods, and also that will also induces the cramping. So, these are one of the major limitations, but the practitioners and the doctors suggest that in such cases to use non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs for the short time. So, which can help to reduce the pain and the cramping for the when you are using for the copper intrauterine devices. So, the third disadvantage is hormonal intrauterine devices, again which will causes the irregular bleeding and the spotting, even missed periods, that is nothing but amenorrhea. So, these are the some of the problems which are pointed because of the usage of the intrauterine devices. And the fourth point, that is increased risk of ectopic pregnancy, nothing but. So, this pregnancy happens outside the uterus. So, there are the chances, so which may the pregnancy may come out of the uterus. So, such cases, so we need to take the precautions while using the intrauterine devices. The small chances of pelvic infection due to bacteria entering the uterus. So, we are placing this into the uterus after usage of several days and months, that may lead to the infection. So, when you have such infections, we need to consult the doctors and get it done with the various anti-infective drugs, so that we can also avoid the infection problems. So, that leads to the irritation, also various types of the problems that we need to consult the doctors. Not recommended for a woman with the heavy and long menstrual periods. In such cases, definitely we cannot prefer IUDs. So, we need to avoid this and we can go for the other conventional contraceptive mechanisms. Risk during insertion and the removal, this is also one of the major problem. If the practitioner will help for the insertion and the removal, then that is also one, you after training people can use it for the insertion and removal of the IUDs. So, now we are going to discuss on the classification of intrauterine devices. So, based on the various parameters, people have classified these intrauterine devices into the various categories. So, here we will see. So, the first classification based on the material. So, now you can see in the picture. So, based on the material, so the T shape of the device can be classified into the two categories. So, that is first one is the plastic material and another one is the metallic. So, the selection of metal is very important. This can be classified to two categories, right. So, plastic and metallic both have advantages as well as disadvantages, right. So, based on the requirement and the stability, storage and compatibility of your drug need to be considered while going with the material. Now, coming to the based on the mechanism. So, here we use hormonal as well as non-hormonal intrauterine devices. This we are going to discuss in our further lectures. So, we will discuss in very detail in our upcoming lectures. So, this third class is based on the shape. So, T shape as we discussed, and ring shaped also device also comes in the market. So, they have the different advantages compared with the T shape, and there are the device which comes with the the spheres like balls. So, that can also can be placed in the uterus. Based on the duration of action, and again it is classified into the short term as well as long term. So far we have long term intrauterine devices which have the people use it for 5 to 8 years for various application, contraception as well as high bleeding cases we use long term. Short term we have we can use it for 24 hours as well as for a 1 week we can use it for the short term cases. So far we discussed on the what are the intrauterine devices, we have discussed on the what are the ideal properties of intrauterine devices, and we discussed on the advantages, limitations of the intrauterine devices, and also we have discussed classification of the intrauterine device. So, I am going to stop today's lecture at this place. So, in our upcoming classes we are going to discuss on the what are the classifications and the new generations of the intrauterine device, and we will also discuss on the case study of intrauterine device. Thank you so much.